The driver of the 43 might be heading to the 42 next year, as reports suggest Bubba Wallace might head to Chip Ganassi Racing next season. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. Silly season update video. We actually have two things to talk about in this video. I'm going to start out by talking about some of the brand new silly season rumors, especially regarding Bubba Wallace and his NASCAR Cup Series future. But also, when I woke up this morning, I saw that NASCAR.com released a survey. They apparently polled 19 current Cup Series drivers and asked them a series of questions, including, who do you think the greatest driver of all time is? All that type of stuff. And they posted the results of the survey. And so the second half of this episode, we're going to react to all those responses to all those different questions, because I just snuck a peek at a couple of them and they're pretty interesting. I think it says a lot about what current Cup Series drivers kind of think of not just historical NASCAR Cup Series figures, but also their competition today and who they think hasn't, who they think doesn't. I thought it was really interesting, so we are going to talk about that later in the episode. But to start with, we've got to hit on a couple of the brand new silly season rumors, reports, I don't know what you want to call it. We'll start with Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal, because he tweeted this morning, Bubba Wallace and his reps are exploring his team options for 2021, and while a return to Richard Petty Motorsports is one of them, another possibility that's emerged is with Chip Ganassi Racing and McDonald's, per sources. Both Chip Ganassi and Wallace share McDonald's as a common partner. Oh boy, talk about an unexpected turn of events should this come to fruition. Adam Stern is not wrong. McDonald's does in fact sponsor Chip Ganassi Racing in the 42 car quite significantly. We've seen them on the hood of Matt Kenseth's race car many times this year, and they do also sponsor Bubba Wallace selectively for a few races a year there on the 43 car. I always thought that was a little bit interesting how a sponsor like that could appear on multiple cars across multiple race teams. It's not quite as weird as what Bass Pro Shops does, where you'll see them on a Chevy in the Xfinity Series with Junior Motorsports. Then you'll see them on a Toyota in the Cup Series with Martin Truex, and then another Chevy in the Cup Series with Austin Dillon or something. Like, they're all over the place. They'll sponsor everyone. I'm honestly shocked Bass Pro Shops is not one of the premier partners NASCAR has, like Geico and Coca-Cola and Xfinity and Busch. I'm shocked Bass Pro Shops is not one of them. But anyway, the fact that McDonald's sponsors two different drivers, two different teams is a little interesting. Could they bridge that gap? Could that be the ultimate factor that leads Bubba Wallace away from Richard Petty and into the hands of Chip Ganassi Racing? That report from Adam Stern makes it sound like a serious possibility. However, another report that came out today from The Athletic seems to think it's far less likely. Jordan Bianchi says that while Bubba Wallace has been linked to both Chip Ganassi Racing and Hendrick Motorsports in recent weeks, neither team is considered likely to sign him. Bianchi also says that Bubba Wallace apparently has a contract extension with Richard Petty Motorsports sitting on his desk waiting for him, and apparently it's been there for months. And Bubba Wallace is the one who has been hesitant to sign that extension, instead choosing to see what other options may be available to him. So we have two slightly conflicting reports, one that seems to suggest there is a real possibility Bubba will go to Chip Ganassi, another one that seems to think that while that's been talked about, it's highly unlikely to happen. I don't really know. I think I know about as much as all of you watching at home do at this point. What I do know is that Bubba Wallace right now is in the middle of his best statistical season since he got to the NASCAR Cup Series. He sits 20th in points, well below the cut line, but still a win can get you in. But the fact that that team is currently 20th in the NASCAR Cup Series points, when both last year and the year before they finished 28th in the standings, that's a huge improvement. Some of it is definitely equipment. Before the 2020 season, Richard Petty Motorsports made an investment and has better equipment this year than they did last year. The cars that Richard Petty is putting on the track in the 2020 season are consistently better than what they had in 2019 and 2018. Not a lot better, but better. But credit to Bubba Wallace, he has not made many mistakes this season and has consistently finished where they're supposed to finish, and in a few cases has maybe finished better than they were supposed to finish. And that's what's led to Richard Petty Motorsports being a top 20 team in the points. I mean, look at some of the drivers he's ahead of. He's ahead of guys like Christopher Bell, who's in a Joe Gibbs affiliated car. He's ahead of both the Roush cars, both the JTG Doherty cars. He's ahead of Germain Racing. Point is, that team is beating teams that last year, the year before, they weren't beating. And a lot of that's due to Bubba Wallace, but a lot of that is due to better equipment from that race team in general. But Bubba Wallace, while of course is having his best statistical career to date, he's also been in the public eye far more than he ever has before. And while that certainly has had its negative effects, it's also had plenty of positive effects. It helped them land a new sponsor, with Cash App being on the hood of the car, I think for this week as well, for a few races this year. And with this added publicity, this added popularity or notoriety, whatever you want to call it, this could very well help Bubba Wallace land a better ride for the 2021 season, which is likely why he has waited when it comes to signing that extension with Richard Petty Motorsports. He is, I think, doing the smart thing here and checking all of his available options. There's still so many question marks regarding this year's silly season. Brad Keselowski still has not signed anywhere. It sounds a little bit more likely every week that he's probably going to stay with Team Penske, but that's still not known for sure. Matt Benedetto, another Penske affiliated driver, we don't know where he's going. We don't know where Eric Jones is going. We don't even know if Matt Kenseth is going to stay in the 42 next year or not. I mean, he's the guy that Bubba would have to replace if he went over to Chip Ganassi Racing, right? I assume Matt Kenseth isn't staying after this year. It felt like this was kind of a one and done thing for him, but we don't actually know that yet. That has not been made public, and everyone's been pretty tight-lipped about all of their drivers' futures. So there's still a lot of uncertainty, but with some of these new reports, some of these new ideas, I must say I didn't have Bubba Wallace going to Chip Ganassi Racing as even a potential possibility, and now it sounds like it's being talked about, at least somewhat internally. So we'll see what comes of it. Again, we have two slightly conflicting reports. I think it's probably unlikely he goes to Chip Ganassi Racing. I think Bubba Wallace will likely stay with Richard Petty Motorsports, but we'll see. Something might happen. I've heard rumors this week that Corey LaJoie could go to JTG Doherty. I've heard all sorts of weird rumors in the last week or two. Some of them credible, some of them not as credible. We'll see what happens as this year goes on. I think with the pandemic, with sponsorship dollars becoming less prevalent because of the struggling economy, I tend to think we're going to see a lot of drivers sign one-year contracts with potential options available for 2022 or beyond. I think a lot of team owners are going to want to sign their drivers to one-year deals because a lot can change in a year. Where's the economy going to be at? What kind of sponsorship will be available? Where's the sport going to head? I mean, we got a brand new race car set to debut in 2022. What kind of costs is that going to add to the team's budgets? I think a lot of owners right now are taking things 1 year at a time, in some cases 1 week at a time, it feels like, and are not really wanting to sign drivers to big, long extensions. And I think there's a lot of drivers that don't want to sign huge extensions right now in the midst of all this uncertainty. So I think that's why silly season is taking longer than usual to develop right now. But I'm sure when the first domino falls, when we find out where Keselowski is going or where Bubba Wallace is going or where Eric Jones is going, I think a lot of other dominoes are going to fall very quickly. Lots of question marks out there, but let me know what you guys think. Where do you think Bubba Wallace will end up in 2021? Let me know down in the comments below. But now, let's go check out that survey from NASCAR.com. Remember, they asked 19 drivers, active Cup Series drivers, a series of questions, and I think these responses are going to be pretty interesting. So let's go check it out. Okay, so today on NASCAR.com, they released a survey from 19 Cup Series drivers who were asked a series of pretty basic, kind of broad NASCAR-related questions, and this is a collection of their answers, of the results from this poll. So this is really interesting to look at. I wanted to look at it together because I took a peek earlier and some of these responses shocked me. So here we go. NASCAR.com driver survey. Question 1. Who is the greatest NASCAR driver of all time? 37% say Jimmy Johnson, as opposed to 31% vote for Richard Petty. Kyle Busch clocks in 4th with 11% of the vote, which, if we remember, 19 drivers voted on this, 19 current Cup Series drivers voted. That roughly means 2 people voted Kyle Busch the greatest driver in NASCAR history. I wonder if Kyle Busch is one of them. He has an ego, but I don't know if he has that big of an ego to vote for himself on one of these polls. Jimmy Johnson 1, Richard Petty 2. At least it's close. It looks like 1 vote is the difference between the two of them likely, so at least it's pretty close, but there's no clear consensus because even Dale Earnhardt's getting a few votes. David Pearson. Somebody voted for David Pearson. That's pretty awesome. Shocking, though, that Jeff Gordon is not listed in the top 5. More championships than Kyle Busch or David Pearson. More wins than Kyle Busch and Dale Earnhardt, at least, and Jimmy Johnson. Looking at the numbers here, this means nobody voted for Jeff Gordon. 19 drivers were asked who's the greatest of all time, and not 1 said Jeff Gordon. 1 said David Pearson. 2 said Kyle Busch. Not 1 said Jeff freaking Gordon. I'm shocked because I think Jeff Gordon might be the most purely talented driver in NASCAR history. I wouldn't consider him the greatest of all time. I think when you got 3 guys with 7 championships, it's got to be between the 3 of them. But Jeff Gordon, he's not even getting consideration from the current field of drivers. That's insane. Maybe it's because, a lot of the drivers racing today, and probably a good number of the ones that were polled, have raced against Jeff Gordon, and most of them raced against Jeff Gordon in the 2000s and 2010s, which was kind of after Jeff Gordon's, championship run. He won his last championship in 2001, I guess, and he was still really good for the rest of the 2000s and into the 2010s. I mean, his final full-time season, he made the championship 4, so he was still really good, but he wasn't winning championships when a lot of these guys were racing against him, so maybe that played into their voting a little bit. The fact that a lot of the drivers racing today never raced against peak Jeff Gordon, because 90s Jeff Gordon was unreal. I'm shocked that Jeff Gordon didn't get a single vote. We're off to a really wild start. This is the question I saw. This is the one I snuck a peek at. When I saw this poll go the way it was, I knew we had to do a video on this because that was shocking to me. But Jimmie Johnson being voted the greatest of all time, I mean, it's close between him and Richard Petty. Personally, for me, there's a difference between best driver of all time and greatest driver of all time. I think when we're talking about greatest of all time, you have to factor in more than just the results on the track. You have to factor in the legacy they've left behind, kind of the myth that is said person. And I think the myth of Richard Petty, 200 wins. I know it was a different time, but we're not going to see 200 wins in the Cup Series probably ever again. The family legacy that is the Petty family, the fact that he's still around today as a team owner, the look, just the look itself. I mean, Richard Petty has an iconic look. The sunglasses, the big hat. I mean, Richard Petty is more of a character. He's more of like a character I'd read about in like ancient text. Like, wow, I can't believe someone like Richard Petty actually existed and did the things that he did. Jimmie Johnson's 5 straight championships across multiple playoff formats in multiple generations of cars, and his 7 championships overall, quite impressive, quite remarkable, and I think you could argue it is more impressive than what Richard Petty did. But if I'm going to talk about the GOAT, I mean, Richard Petty's called the king for a reason. I would still lend my vote slightly in favor of Richard Petty, and I think Dale Earnhardt gets a lot of credit as well there, but I can't be mad with Jimmie Johnson being voted number 1. I think that's at least fair. It was close, so that's fair. Other than yourself, who is the best active NASCAR Cup Series driver? Kyle Busch overwhelms the vote here. I don't know about overwhelms. 42%. It's, not a majority, I guess, but double that of Kevin Harvick. Again, if we have 19 people voting, that means roughly 8 or 9 people at least voted for Kyle Busch. If I had to guess, that's almost half. And it says other than yourself, so I'll trust that Kyle Busch, if he was part of this group that voted, I'll trust that Kyle Busch played by the rules. But Kevin Harvick second, Denny Hamlin and Jimmie Johnson tied for third, Logano fifth. Again, I can't be too mad at these results. I think the fact that Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick are 1 and 2 are accurate. I think you could argue the two of them could be flipped, especially the way they've run this year. I think you could argue that could be flipped. I personally do think Jimmie Johnson's a little high for best active Cup Series driver as far as like best right now. That's how I interpret this question. Jimmie Johnson is not a top 5 NASCAR driver right now. That might be controversial to some people, but just look at the results, look at the mistakes. Jimmie Johnson's not a top 5 driver right this second. Denny Hamlin probably deserves to be in there. I'd put Brad Keselowski up into consideration here as well. And I think not too far below this list should be guys like Chase Elliott. I know he's really young and I know he's still relatively unproven, but he's been the leader of Hendrick Motorsports for the last 3 years. That deserves some recognition. But other than that, they got the top 2 right, I think. I think without a doubt, no matter what order you put them in, I think Harvick and Kyle Busch should be 1 and 2 on your best active Cup Series driver list. I think anyone should agree with that. But let's move on. Who is the best active NASCAR Cup Series crew chief? Oh, overwhelmingly Rodney Childers. This I agree on as well. I think Rodney Childers is the best crew chief in the NASCAR Cup Series. I've said before that I think Kevin Harvick was a really good driver his whole career. I think he was held back by RCR for many years there, but the moment he teamed up with Rodney Childers and Stewart-Haas Racing in 2014, they won a championship, and they've won dozens of races just in the last few years alone. So Rodney Childers, while Harvick is great, I think Childers deserves a lot of credit. This probably is why the drivers voted Kyle Busch the best active driver. I think a lot of drivers probably think some of Harvick's success is largely due to Rodney Childers, so maybe they're discrediting Harvick a little bit, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. You notice Adam Stevens, Kyle Busch's crew chief, is not on here at all. In fact, Rodney Childers gets all the votes. Chris Gabehart, who's Denny Hamlin's crew chief, gets a couple of votes, and then Justin Alexander, Alan Gustafson, Knaus, Paul Wolfe, they got 1 vote each, and that's it. No votes for any other crew chiefs. I think Chad Knaus is an interesting one. Much like Jimmie Johnson, all of his success came years ago, but it was a lot of it. Right now, I don't know that Chad Knaus is a top 5 crew chief either. I think it's hard to compare him because he's working with William Byron, who's one of the youngest and least experienced drivers in the Cup Series today, so it's hard to kind of gauge where Chad Knaus is at right now, but I don't know. That's a little. I'm not so sure about that one. Justin Alexander getting some votes from Richard Childress Racing after, I guess, some recent races, people giving him some props. All right, good for Justin Alexander. I wonder if that was Austin Dillon or voting for Justin Alexander in there. Got to plug his guy, I guess. At this point in the season, we're talking about 2020. Which team, excluding your own, has been the best? Again, it's pretty close, but Stewart-Haas Racing wins the vote here with 42%. Team Penske just behind, and then Joe Gibbs Racing is third. I think definitely those are the top 3 teams this year. I don't think anyone could dispute that. If we just look at number of wins, we look at the point standings right now, those are the 3 best teams. Stewart-Haas Racing started the year off slow, but Harvick got it going. He started winning. Now Eric Almirola is running top 5 every week. Cole Custer, a rookie, now has a win. So Stewart-Haas Racing jumping to the top of this list. quite possibly. This year, we haven't really seen one team clearly run away from the pack this year. In other years, we typically see one, maybe two teams clearly separate themselves from the rest of the field. Not really the case this year. I mean, Joe Gibbs Racing, Denny Hamlin's winning a lot of races, but Kyle Busch really isn't. So Joe Gibbs Racing alone is kind of up and down. Team Penske, Keselowski's won some, Logano's won some, Ryan Blaney's led a lot of laps, but he only has one win to his credit. So even they're a little up and down. Stewart-Haas Racing, we talk about how Cole Custer, a rookie, finally won a race. Like, that's pretty freaking cool. Harvick's dominating, but Clint Bowyer is on the verge of missing the playoffs. I mean, he's right there. He's like 15th in points right now, kind of in the danger zone. So even Stewart-Haas has been a little up and down. It's kind of the nature of this season. This season's thrown so many different variables at these teams that it's kind of created a lot of parity, relatively speaking. But I agree with this. I think Stewart-Haas Racing, by a slim margin, should be number one. Ooh, this might be an interesting question. Which Cup Series driver, other than yourself, gets the best consistent performance from their equipment? And the drivers voted for Kevin Harvick. See, this is interesting. This kind of contradicts one of the earlier votes, because earlier they voted Rodney Childers as the best crew chief by a wide margin, but now they're saying Kevin Harvick's the one who gets the most out of his equipment, or at least gets the, I guess I'm reading it wrong, gets the best consistent performance from his equipment. I guess that's fair. Kevin Harvick does not make very many mistakes. I mean, that's a fact. But he won this vote by a pretty wide margin. Surprised that Kyle Busch, who they voted the fourth best driver of all time, they voted the best driver currently. Surprised he's not on this top 5 list, but Timmy Hill is. Look at Timmy Hill getting a vote. Look at Timmy Hill. The other Busch brother, Kurt Busch, gets a vote as well. But look at Timmy Hill sneaking his way up there, tied for 5th. That's good for Timmy Hill. But yeah, Kevin Harvick is always very steady. He does not make very many mistakes. That is without a doubt. So I think that's probably what people are basing this vote on. You know, his best maybe isn't quite as good as like Kyle Busch's best, but Harvick does not make mistakes ever, hardly. All right, and the last question, they asked 19 current Cup Series drivers. At this point in the 2020 season, which driver other than yourself is your pick to win the 2020 Cup Series championship? Wow, only 2 guys got votes, and it's close. It's close, but the drivers went with Denny Hamlin. So remember, they had 19 drivers vote. That means 10 voted for Hamlin and 9 voted for Harvick. That's as close. That's literally as close as it can possibly get without it being a straight up tie. So Denny Hamlin, the drivers think Denny Hamlin is the favorite to win his first ever NASCAR Cup Series championship. That's remarkable. I think clearly the drivers believe it's a big 2 right now. Harvick and Hamlin lead the series in wins. They've often traded the win back and forth for several races in a row at some points this season. Yeah, easily Harvick and Hamlin are the 2 favorites right now, but with this playoff format, I'm surprised nobody else got a vote. I'm surprised nobody voted Keselowski, at least one person, or one person voted for Blaney. Maybe NASCAR only gave them these 2 options, but I doubt that. I have a feeling that they could have picked anybody. I mean, it says that you just couldn't pick yourself, so I mean, Harvick and Hamlin would have had to pick somebody else, so I don't know. All the playoff points that these 2 drivers have racked up this season definitely makes me think they will be at Phoenix for the championship race, but it all comes down to one race, and given that it is Phoenix this year, that plays to Kevin Harvick's strengths historically. I know it's not the same Phoenix that he's always grown up dominating at, but just that factor alone, I think, gives Kevin Harvick a bit of an advantage, but the drivers believe, by a very slim margin, that Denny Hamlin is the favorite to win the 2020 Cup Series championship. What do you guys, the fans at home, what do you guys think? Do you think the drivers got this one wrong? Do you think they got it right? Is there anybody that they're not considering that you think should have gotten maybe a vote or 2 here? Is there some consideration? What do you guys think? This is fun. This is really interesting. I'm glad NASCAR.com did this. I wish there was a way we could see the 19 drivers who voted, just because that might, I don't know. We don't have to see how they voted. We don't have to know who, Ryan Blaney might have voted for, but I just want to know who was on this voting panel. But either way, 19 active Cup Series drivers. There's the results. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you are new. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. And, of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. We continue to add new names to this list. I really, really, really appreciate the support. You have no idea. It's thanks to you guys that I'm able to continue to do this show as frequently as I post. And that would not be possible without your support on Patreon. So I really appreciate the support, you guys. We've got another video in the works. It was actually going to come out today, but with that poll being posted with these silly season rumors, I wanted to do this video first. So likely tomorrow, sometime this weekend, I'll have another video up. And of course, after New Hampshire on Sunday, I'll have a normal race review video up. So lots of stuff coming down the pipeline here very soon. Thank you all for watching. Stay safe out there, everyone. I'll see you real soon.